Nihilist here. I am with Joe Nice, one of the dubstep forefathers here in America. We're playing a show together here in Hartford, Connecticut tonight.
Yes, sir. That's right.
Super excited.
February 18th, the date.
Yes, sir. And we just want to sit down for a few minutes, talk a little bit, some questions, and just get to know the man a little bit. So, you started playing dubstep in the early 2000s. Right. You have been to 50 countries, 6 continents.
Yeah.
But before that, you were a Baltimore club DJ in Maryland.
Yep.
But you actually had taken a hiatus because you had fallen out of love with the music. Right. So, talk a bit about what discovering dubstep and what captivated you about it, and what made you want to spread the sound for the next 20 years.
Well, first of all, thanks for taking the time to set all this up here. Just so everybody knows, we got a couple of cameras here. This man's a one-man production crew. I mean, there's microphones. We got the TASO machine over here. We got the laptop with the questions, the external hard drive, a couple different cameras. Full production setup here, man. So I appreciate all the energy and effort you put into making this happen.
Of course.
But to answer your question, I fell out of love with Baltimore Club because it got repetitive. And I think everybody has a time in their lives when they want to find something different. They want to explore their personal horizons. They want to expand the possibilities of who they can be and what they enjoy doing. And I just didn't enjoy Baltimore Club anymore. I still love it. I still listen to it a lot because there's always going to be a part of me that is connected to that music, not only because it's what I first started buying records for and playing, but it's also a represents where I grew up, because I grew up in Baltimore. If you listen to a lot of Baltimore Club is an aggressive, fast-paced music. You feel that in the music. Baltimore has that reputation. It is fast-paced. It is aggressive. There's a percussive and pugnacious quality with with Baltimore Club, and you feel that in Baltimore. There is an aggressiveness to Baltimore. Baltimore is a loud city, and there's parts of that in the music, the dubstep that I enjoy playing, that it comes out in me because I'm a product of that environment to a certain extent. So at the same time, there's something that I found with dubstep that I thought was incredibly imaginative and incredibly fresh. It was different. It wasn't like what other DJs were playing in Baltimore at the time. It wasn't like what other people were playing in the United States. No one was really pushing it. So luck met opportunity, timing met serendipity. Here I am. That's the best way I can say it.
And you just continue to keep just following the
that's really what it was. That's really what it was. There was I know I've talked about this a couple of other times. There was a festival in Baltimore called the Starscape Festival, June 8th, 2002. I'll never forget it. And they had a tent there. It was called the UK Invasion tent. And it was all the big UK DJs at the time that were playing really just garage.
Yeah.
So you had Horace J, you had Jada Flex, Emma Feline, Zed Bias was there, and this was 02 Zed Bias. So the Mad Slinky project, the Mad Slinky album that he released, came out a few months after that. Hatcha was there. And Hatcha and I would always email each other here and there because he was the main guy at Big Apple Records.
Yeah.
The record store.
One of their original labels,
legend. It was the record store in East Croydon, and it was basically the mecca for buying records back in those days. If you wanted a record, you went to Big Apple. So I would email each other from time to time. He'd let me know what's going on. Hey, this is coming out. This is coming out. So I remember. I don't know if I still have the email, but I remember him telling me one time, he's like, yeah, these 2 young kids are making some real bangers right now. I'm like, who are they? He says, this bloke Benga and this other bloke named Scream. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like holy, it's all these 2 youngsters, 14, 15 years old. I'm like, no way, really? So then, when he played that night at Starscape, it was obviously all 10-inch presses, all dub plates. And he probably had 45 minutes of just old Benga and Scream tunes from over 20 years ago. And it sounded thoroughly different than what everybody else was playing.
Yeah.
And I saw that and I was like, That's what I need to be doing.
Amazing.
I need to do that, but put my own spin on it and push it in Baltimore and see how far I can take it.
Yeah.
And just like you so eloquently said earlier, Ron, here I am now, 2 decades later, 49 countries later, probably 150 cities later, and thousands of shows later, and here I am, which is crazy to think about, because I never imagined that I would be doing it this long.
Yeah.
And I never imagined that music would take me to all of these places. I never thought about that at all. It was never really my intent. I mean, so much of, I guess, my notoriety not only came from being, I guess, quote unquote, the first to really push dubstep really in North America, but then, some of the stuff that me and Dave Q and the guys there, Joe Akali, Seckle, Alex, and I miss all of them. Okay? They're all dear friends and brothers of mine.
You guys still keep in touch,
Yeah. I mean, we're all busy living our lives. And
of course.
Dub War. The Dub War party was a big thing, and I know a lot of the dubstep parties that happen now. If you go ahead and you do a family tree, you do a timeline of dubstep in America, and I guess the history of dubstep parties in America, it all eventually will go back to that basement in Brooklyn, New York on June 25th, 2005.
Yeah, so that was actually going to be one of my questions. Dub War is probably one of your biggest achievements or contributions, I should say, to dubstep culture, as you mentioned. So, you started it with Dave Q in 2005. So did you guys set out to make the kind of records that you did? And if not, what was it kind of like realizing that more and more people across America were starting to appreciate the sound?
It was like trying to put together IKEA furniture without reading the instruction manual. That's really what it was like. We didn't know what we were doing, but we knew that what we were doing felt right, and somehow we made all the pieces fit. And that Expedit bookcase ended up looking like a bookcase when we were done.
Yeah.
And it was. We had our bumps and bruises. Yeah, we had some difficulties here and there. But I wouldn't trade those 5 years for anything.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wouldn't trade those 5 years for anything, because there were so many people that were influenced by what we were doing in those parties. The curation of those parties, the presentation of the artists that we brought over. Hell, the artists that we brought over. I mean, because people had never seen or heard a lot of these artists that we brought over. You'd see them, you'd hear about the tunes on internet forums. You'd see them show up on Dubstep All Stars mixes, or people would play them, and you'd hear the stories about these tunes being rewound at these massive parties that are taking place in London, Fabric, or the Black Sheep Bar, or at Mass in Brixton, or at Third Base, or so many of these other places around. And we were doing that here in America. And it was just like, other cities started taking note of that. So people, Los Angeles, they were saying, well, look, if New York City can do this, we can do this in LA, we can do this in Chicago, we can do this in Miami, we can do it in Houston, Texas, we can do it in Austin, we can do it in all these other places. And then Canada, we can do it in Toronto. We can try to put this together in Vancouver with the lighter parties back in the day. We can do this, anywhere else. And then next thing you know, festivals were starting taking interest. I remember, someone might need to fact check this, but I don't know if dubstep was being played at festivals until we got invited to play a set at, which festival was it? The Camp Disco Festival. And that was, what was that? I want to say that was 07 or 08.
That sounds about right. It was probably in the early days of Camp Disco, yeah.
Yeah, it was the early days of Camp Disco when it wasn't outside of Philadelphia. It was outside of Albany, New York. It was in a small town called, I'm trying to remember it. Amsterdam, New York, which is coincidentally where the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame is.
Okay.
Yeah, of all places, Amsterdam, New York.
Are you a big wrestling fan?
You know, I used to watch my share of wrestling.
Nice.
You know what I'm saying? I used to watch my share of wrestling back in the day.
Hey, it's not my thing, but hey, you know, a lot of people really love it. So that's a culture all in itself.
Yeah, it really honestly is. Sure enough, is. You know, especially back in the early days, I was more of an NWA guy rather than a WWF guy. I was certainly more Ric Flair than Hulk Hogan. You know what I'm saying? I was more Rock and Roll Express as opposed to the Hart Foundation. You know, I was more Magnum TA as opposed to Tito Santana.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I was more Dusty Rhodes than San Martino. I was definitely more an NWA guy. Yeah. Full respect to the WWF guys, and then ultimately, obviously, WWE. But yeah, the NWA was just a different energy, a different vibe. It felt more cozy. It felt less commercial.
Yeah.
Even though they were still doing great business, it felt less commercial. It felt more underground. And it's interesting that I'm talking about this now because I'm thinking about this in the context of dubstep. When you think about kind of what happened later on in about 2010, 2011, how dubstep became brostep and became massively commercial and didn't necessarily sound or look or feel like what dubstep was 8 to 10 years prior. I think there's a somewhat of a correlation between wrestling back in those days also, because if you were watching an NWA show in the South at the Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro, North Carolina, in front of a crowd of 7,500 people, and Ric Flair's wrestling, I don't know, Ronnie Garvin in a steel cage for 30 minutes or something, and there's 7,500 people. There's 7,500 people like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. This is awesome. This is amazing. You know, it's not like you take that and you change it to maybe, later, a few years later, and you'd have, I don't know, Shawn Michaels wrestling Triple H in 2009, 2010 in Madison Square Garden in front of 18,000 people. Sure, it's still going to be a good match, but it's not going to feel the same because you now have 18,000 people there, and it's less violent. It's more choreographed. It's less organic. It's a departure from what quote unquote wrestling fans like, which is the authentic. Even though it's still kayfabe, it's still planned. It felt authentic. It felt quote unquote real in the NWA days. And I'm not going to say the WWF and WWE, eventual WWE stuff wasn't real, but it just didn't feel the same.
Yeah.
And the same thing could be said about brostep back in those days, and as opposed to dubstep.
Yeah.
The dubstep, 03, 04, 05, 06, 07, 08 stuff, that's like, that's the golden age, that's the Renaissance.
Oh yeah, I mean that's when the genre was, finding its footing and kind of defining what it was.
And it was still fresh. And it was still fresh. And we weren't necessarily playing in front of crowds, in front of 15,000 people or 10,000 people or 1,000 people. If we got 200, 300 people at a show in some places, they were like, whoa, we just played in front of this many people.
Yeah.
Then sure, even at a festival, even some of those festivals weren't necessarily big festivals, but you were still drawing 1,500, 2,000 people at a festival. And we might play at a stage or underneath a tent in front of 300, 400 people. It's like, there's people.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, when it comes to playing a show, it just comes down to the energy of the crowd. If they're super engaged, then you're going to want to put your all into the performance,
Yeah, but at the same time, it's also incumbent upon the DJ to put their all into the performance anyway. Regardless of what the crowd is saying or not.
Yeah, that is true.
You know what I'm saying? Because everyone's got stuff they're dealing with, but when you're in front of a room, field, crowd, stadium, whatever, of people, it's your responsibility to give the very best of yourself at that particular time for however long you're supposed to be doing it. Whether it's 60 minutes, 75 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever. And part of not only being responsible, part of really being a professional is being able to block out everything else that's happening and make that time that you're supposed to be doing what you're supposed to be doing, the most important time in your life.
Yeah.
Nothing else is supposed to be getting in the way.
Absolutely.
And nothing else is, quite honestly, really supposed to matter at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes past the point of concentration, because anybody can kind of, I mean, I've got 2 master's degrees. There are plenty of times where I didn't want to sit in a library and study for 2 hours,
mm-hmm.
or I have to write 30-page papers about public program evaluation. But all right, I did all that. But it's the ability to kind of it's the ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it. And I find a lot of people don't always have that sort of discipline about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to live performance, I think there's I'm not going to say some people mail it in. I never want to say that. But there's sometimes you see people on stage and it's just like, I need something more.
True.
I need something more. I need something. I need, I need something to hold on to emotionally with this performance. I need to feel something. I need to feel that you put yourself there and gave of yourself that during that time. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, 100%.
And there are times when there are times when I don't always feel that. And that happens sometimes. I mean, everybody's different. Everybody's different. But I know, not only just because of what I've done and what I'm still doing, but I guess my responsibility to not only this community, but the culture, I have to give my best.
Yeah.
I have to. And I don't mind saying this to you and everybody else on camera. You're a black person in this space and in this community.
Mm-hmm.
There's being good enough is not good enough. No, good enough is not good enough. I have to be exceptional. I have to be phenomenal just to get opportunities to do what I love doing. And I think that is also an important part to all of this. Good enough isn't good enough.
Yeah.
If you think, okay, yeah, I'm cool. No, you're not. It's got to be more.
No, you always got to keep pushing toward what you think is that level. Just keep pushing past that.
That's it.
But you've always been known for having tons of energy in your sets. You've done that for years, and that's probably why you're still going at it like this. But,
and honestly, I've never really taken the time to think where the energy comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know I didn't sleep much last night, and here it is coming up almost 4 o'clock. Yeah, 3:40 in the afternoon. I haven't had my pre-game for pre-show nap yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get that in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of times where I've played 5 shows in 6 days, 6 shows in 7 days, and you stop thinking about being tired.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and quite honestly, you don't have time to be tired. You don't have time to be tired. You have time, your time has to be spent on doing what you're supposed to be doing and putting your energy and really your focus into performing.
Yeah.
That's really what it's about. It's not about, oh man, I'm tired. Well, yeah, you can sleep later on. What about now? I remember, I forget where I heard this from, but somebody said that you have to have what's called a win mindset, W-I-N. Okay, a winning mindset. Not winning, but a win mindset. Win, he meant it as an acronym. Win, what's important now? What's important now? You thinking about going to bed while in the middle of your set, or giving everything you've got while you're playing your set?
I love that. That's a great acronym. What's important now?
Yeah, there you go.
I really like that. Yeah, so you've always given everything into your sets. You've been known for the energy in your performances. You've also, in the old days, were very well known for and stood out for having a collection of 10-inch dub plates that apparently you had to fund yourself to create.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, we buy songs today on like Beatport or iTunes or whatever, but like, that can you just talk a bit about what that process was like and how it is compared to collecting music these days?
Yeah, it's in those days there was a lot more quality control, because if you were investing $30 into cutting a 10-inch dub plate, you had to make sure that what you were going to play, you knew you were going to play. It wasn't in the maybe pile or in the maybe folder or hold up on this folder on your laptop or in your computer. If you were going to commit to cutting that tune onto a 10-inch piece of acetate, you knew you would better play it. So, yeah, there's probably 35, maybe 40 boxes of dub plates now I took them out of my storage unit and put them in my ex-wife's garage in her house. And there's still a bunch of dub plates that I had in Canada from when I was living there back in the beginning, from summer of 2019 until the pandemic, which was really March 2020. My ex-girlfriend still has a bunch of my stuff up there, and I know it's safe. I'm not too concerned or worried about it. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of tunes from a lot of producers from back in those days that I still wish I had the digital, the wave files of. Oh man, there's a lot of those tunes. A lot of stuff that I'm just like, oh damn, I don't have the wave of this. I don't have the wave of this. You look on your hard drive, you just don't have it. Your hard drive crashes. You didn't back it up. Yeah, wow. There's probably a good 40 or 50 screen tunes I wish I had the wave files for still to this day. Can't find them.
Yeah, it's one of the pros and cons of physical media is you have something that's there, tangible, but then also if it's not there with you, you can't have it. You know. Yeah,
there's probably 10 to 15 mala bits that I can't find the digital files of. Can't find them. Like, gone.
No, it's the worst thing. I've experienced that just listening to mixes and trying to go through the track list and being like vinyl mixes from people and trying to be like, oh, can I find this tune anywhere on the internet? You just can't, you know? So yeah, I'm sure someone like you who was back there during the vinyl days, there's a lot of those songs you just kind of remember that you're like.
I mean, I can't tell you how much time I spent looking to an old mala bit called Body Clock Delay. I looked on CDs, all these different tapes that I looked everywhere. 2 different laptops and an iMac, nothing. It's an old screen bit called Dub-I, D-U-B-AI, classic tune, can't find it. Those 2 bits that he did with Earl 16. I got them on dub plates, got 10-inch presses of those. The actual wave files, nah, gone.
Do you still play on vinyl for your sets?
No. And the reason why now is the pandemic.
Yeah, okay.
Pandemic. It's become considerably more difficult to cut dub plates.
Yeah.
And it's also become considerably more difficult to press vinyls now.
Yeah. The vinyl industry is like backed up. It's bad for a lot of artists, especially the smaller artists who can't, like a Taylor Swift who can push their record through. A lot of artists can't get their vinyls for like a year or so.
There you go. Yeah, it's a year. So I mean, even with my record label, Gourmet Beats, and I've been started that label back in 2000. I was in grad school then, so it would have been 2015 when I started that label. Knowing what I know now, I would have never started in 2015. I would have started back in 2010 or earlier, and just built it out from back then. I would have done it years before, but I had other intentions. It's also part of the reason why I didn't want to learn how to make my own music until maybe about 1.5 years or 2 years ago. Because I was so invested in pushing the sound. I was so invested in the events that I was doing, not only Dub War, but Reconstruct. And then even before Dub War, being a resident at a club in Baltimore called Sonar. I was so invested in that. My uncle told me this years ago, he said, Joe, you can't chase 2 rabbits at once. So what was I going to do? Was I going to try to be this purveyor of the sound through performance and DJing and starting my own radio show, Gourmet Beats, and all of that? Or was I going to try to learn how to make the music, but then not know how to play the music? Was I going to sit in front of a computer for thousands of hours until I get to that quote-unquote 10,000 hour point where I've reached some level of proficiency with a DAW, whether it's Fruity Loops or Reason, etc., and feel like I'm confident in my music making? Or am I going to travel around, play shows, and eventually start my own label? I chose to go that way. Obviously, revisionist history is always 2020 because you can kind of see the picture a lot clearer once you've lived through that experience. you know, that's the thing about experience. Experience always tells you the answers to the test after you've taken the test. So I've done all of that now. Now I'm seeing that I've always had a musical mind. My father, God rest his soul, he passed away not too long ago, and he was a steel drum player. He played steel piano and steel drum.
Steel drum.
Yeah, that's my dad. And in fact, my dad had a couple of albums back in the day, and I still have one of his albums on vinyl. I got 2 copies of it. I don't know how I got 2 copies, but I've got 2 copies of it. And his name's on it, his picture's on it, and his steel drum, his face is there with that old school Maurice White afro. You know, the one where it's kind of bald in the middle, but the cul-de-sac. Pops had one of those back in the day, right? Yeah. No, it was fresh, man. He kept that thing clean too. Yeah. Man. He had the afro pick, clean it out, pat it down so it's nice and round around the back and the sides, right? So, yeah, I had that, and so I've always had a musical mind. I've always had that in me. I played in the high school band. I played trombone all the way up through college. So, you know, I've always had that sort of in me. I've always known how I felt with music, especially music that I resonated with. And now I'm feeling like the time for me now is to make my own music and give something musical, not only back to this community, but to the culture. Because that's where I feel I'm at right now.
That's great, yeah. I thought you were going to be one of my questions is asking about you getting into production, because I know in the past couple of years, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
So that's a great reasoning. Like you said, you always want to do something to the highest degree. So it's good that you kind of compartmentalized it. Now you're kind of putting the focus into it.
Yeah. So and the other part of it is there's a certain message that I wanted to convey with the music, and I'm not necessarily hearing that with a lot of the music that I'm hearing now, and I'm not necessarily just specifically talking about dubstep or underground dance music. I'm talking about music as a whole. There's the message. The messages aren't there. It's not like in the 60s and the 70s where you had there was a civil rights movement. There was Vietnam War. There was the racism was obvious. Let's put it that way. And the people making music at that time wrote songs and created music to reflect the human condition of the people of the society they were a part of. So, I mean, obviously, you listen to Bob Marley, everything he sung about, not just about love, but many of the political songs that he talked about. Obviously, Get Up, Stand Up. I mean, he talked about, I shot the sheriff, but I didn't shoot the deputy. But then if you listen to the lyrics, it's like, okay, wow, that's deep. And think about police violence in the United States now. The best example I can give you of an album that not only resonated with people on a musical level, but spoke to people on a socio-political level, came out in 1971. It's Marvin Gaye, What's Going On. Go ahead and listen to that album in its entirety. You're gonna go away thinking, damn, wow, am I doing enough in my community? How can I be a better parent?
Yeah.
You know, how can I serve others in a better way?
Yeah, that was a very impactful record.
Yeah, and it still stands the test of time because much of what he sung about on that album is incredibly relevant now. Think about the song "Mercy, Mercy Me." The song is subtitled "The Ecology." Think about all of the train derailments that we've seen in the United States over the past week and a half, and how it's damaging the ecology or the environment.
Yeah.
Think of it. Marvin Gaye talked about birds and fish dying. Think about what's happened in East Palestine, in the Ohio River, and birds and fish and other pets dying because of this chemical spill as a result of a train derailment. Spewing noxious chemicals into the land and into the water. That's something that people can resonate with back then, with obviously, I guess at that point, leaded fuel, lead paint, etc. to now. You're seeing it. And that was 52 years ago he was singing about this stuff. There's a reason. So there's the messages that I think I want to push in the music that I'm still making, that I'm learning how to make. It's that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Because it's one thing to be in a party or be in a dance or at a rave and, you know, and you know, it's great. But there's another part of me that wants to not only, KRS One said this years ago off of one of his albums. He said it was about edutainment, which is a portmanteau of education and entertainment. And that's what I want to do with the music. Because I not only want people to enjoy what they're listening to, but I want people to learn something from the music that I'm trying to create.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's really important. I do think that art is the best way to convey messages and get people to be to kind of think more about certain issues.
Yeah, it's liberation through creation.
And I think that's a great thing to bring to events too, because sure. I think a lot of people probably go to shows or raves as like a form of escapism,
right?
There's nothing wrong with escapism. It's great to be just in a place and kind of like go free of your worries. But I think one of the best parts about EDM and dubstep culture is that it is a very tightly knit community. So I think that people being able to have those conversations inside a community that is so tightly knit and passionate is can have some big effects for sure.
Yeah, I agree, because each one teach one. So as someone who's been at this for such a long time, I feel a certain responsibility to not only share what I know, but make sure that the culture continues on and remains sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's also important.
Yeah, so like you said, you've been here for a long time and you're very passionate about the culture, making sure it moves forward.
Yep.
But so you are clearly someone who's very passionate and very knowledgeable.
Thank you.
Your presence online is a lot. It's besides just your DJing, it's a lot more expanded and very human. You talk a lot about exercise. You do a lot of activism through your accounts.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned before, you have 2 master's degrees. So I'm curious. When you look at the big picture of your life and how the things you're putting out in the world, what do you want your legacy to be?
It's as simple as this. I want my legacy. I want my daughter and her adopted sister to look back at what I did and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, my daddy did that. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's it. I don't know how else to answer that question. I don't want to be like, oh, well, yeah, I want other people to come after me and play music like me, or, I want other people to, start their own clothing lines, or, no. No. I want Parker and Zamaya to look at their dad, even though Zamaya's not my child, my ex-wife adopted her. But I want both of them to look back at what I've done and be like, hey, my dad or Joe did this. And I'm proud of what he did. That's all that really matters.
Yeah.
Everything else, all the accolades, all the flying around the world and meeting all these people, that's lovely. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. But, I know I mentioned this earlier. When my dad passed away about 3 weeks ago, my brothers and I invited people up on the altar to go ahead and offer some words about my dad and everything. And I remember something that I said during that, and it was something that Dr. Cornell West said in one of his lectures that I was watching online. And he said, what do we do from the womb to the tomb? What do we do from the womb to the tomb? And I remember saying that, when I was speaking about my dad, there was about 150 people there, which is like, wow, there's a lot of people here. But I remember saying that, and I remember when everything was over and we started cleaning up, went back to my mom and my stepdad's place, and I went to sleep and I thought about that, and I thought about that in the context of not only my daughter but her adopted sister. And I said, okay, what do we do from the womb to the tomb? But how do we make sure that a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old become not only responsible adults, but people that they can be proud of when they get older. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People, when they look themselves in the mirror, they can say, hey, you know what? My mom and my dad, they raised me the right way. For me, that's really where I'm focusing and pouring my energy into now. Is honestly a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old. That's really where that's for me. That's what it's about right now. I've done a lot. I've gone farther than I can even imagine that I could have ever imagined with music. Way farther, and I'm grateful and I'm thankful for every opportunity that's come my way, including this right now with you. But for me, it's those two.
Yeah.
It's those two, and because I want to see them. I want to see them become the best versions of themselves, whatever that comes to be. Whether if Zamaya wants to draw and become a painter, great. If Parker just wants to become a gymnast or do her diving like she does 3 days a week, great. Whatever they want to do, I just want to make sure that they are happy with what they're doing, but not only happy with what they're doing, but happy with themselves and who they are as not just young black girls, but eventually young black girls that will become young black women in this country. And I want to make sure that each of them have the tools to, and I'm going to say this and I don't mean this lightly, I want to make sure that they both have the tools to not only succeed, but to survive. Because that's important.
Well, that's beautiful. And it's great that your head is so focused on, just creating that foundation for your children, because that is so important. And I think that...
Yeah, I also agree. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I think that just highlights exactly what's so great about you is, again, you're so human. You're not a brand. You're a person who was, again, here in the moment at the beginning of dubstep, and has just expanded to where it is now. And I just love that I just love that you're such a human person, and that you are kind of the representation of early days of dubstep, because it shows that it doesn't have to be all super glamorous and brand driven. It can just be down to the person and the culture, and
and that's important. And you see, and quite honestly, you see a lot of that in dubstep from the early days even until now. A lot of the guys that started out 20 to 25 years ago, they came from humble backgrounds in South London. It wasn't about, it was never about making it big. It was never about being popular. It was never about all the glitz and glamour, the notoriety. It was always about not only the music, but the people who made the music and the people who played the music. So what's interesting is, and I guess the crazy parallel to all of this is, in Baltimore, I don't mind saying this, there's a bit of an inferiority complex in Baltimore, because we're not New York City, we're not Philadelphia, we're not Washington, D.C. We're this city that's halfway between Philly and Washington, D.C., that everybody kind of just seems to drive past on Interstate 95. Oh, wow, okay, there's the Inner Harbor, that's nice. I can smell the Old Bay spice. I can see the Inner Harbor. Oh, wow, look at that. Yeah, that's the aquarium. Okay. Bye. I'm on my way to D.C., I'm going to the White House. or I'm going to go to the Smithsonian, whatever. I'm going to see the Washington Monument. There's always been that. And there's a lot of people who have come from Baltimore that have gone on to do great things and done a lot in a lot of different places and spaces. But I think many of us who have come from that city have never forgot where we came from. Because we know how difficult Baltimore can be to live in. And it always feels like there's something going to happen. And you have that. There's this spidey sense that you have from living in this city that never leaves you. And you're always like, okay, well, let me take a look at this. Let me make sure. It's not necessarily a paranoia. It's just something that happens from being in that city for all this time. And that humility, again, people from Baltimore, we're not, from what I've seen, we're not looking at, we're not brash or, hey, no, it's not it. It's about what you do and who you are. It's never about, what kind of car you drive or the clothes you wear or anything like that. And I think so much of dubstep in the early days is that, and it's reflected in the people who not only made the music but played the music, went to the parties, etc. So I think I'm an extension of that, just not only from understanding their culture but understanding where I came from and my background and my upbringing and how it parallels what was going on in London in those times. And yeah, I mean, if people look at my Instagram, and yeah, sure, I'll go ahead and post up about a show that I'm playing tonight or something I've got going on next week or a future record release. But there's other stuff that I'm going to talk about because I've now reached a point where I can talk about this stuff. I don't have to worry about pissing off a promoter because, Joe talked about Joe talked about the Tyree Nichols case, and I don't think that he should be talking about that because he's a DJ. He shouldn't be talking about these sorts of things. Or Joe's talking about healthcare again because, you know what, well, whatever, I got healthcare through my wife and we got a job and we're on the Obamacare and everything's great. Well, yeah, that's great, but there's other people who don't have that. There's other people that are dealing with real life situations that are outside the realm of playing music or outside the realm of producing music. There's other stuff. And it kind of goes to what we were talking about before while you were setting everything up. All of us have our own lived experiences, and there's some stuff that people haven't experienced or haven't had happen to them. I've done a lot. I've seen a lot. I've traveled a lot, and I have no problem with sharing those experiences with people because I know there are going to be some people who may not necessarily be as fortunate as me to have gone to some of the places I've gone or met some of the people I've met or had some of the experiences that I've had. And that's okay because everybody's going to live their lives and they're going to write their own stories. They're going to write their own movie script. And, eventually the director's going to say, cut, it's all over. It happens to everybody. It's cool though.
Joe, this has been a great interview.
Thank you, brother.
I think for length of time, we're probably going to wrap it up. But yeah, we are so grateful for all the experiences that you've had and the experiences that you have given to dubstep culture.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Just to wrap it up here, tell people where they can find you and what you got going on next.
Everybody can find me. Website, joenicedj.net. Get your merch. It's important. I mean, you're seeing the 4 fights here on the shirt here. A lot of stuff on the website. Go check that out. www.joenicedj.net. All my social media, it's at Joe Nice DJ. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, all Joe Nice DJ. Record label is Gourmet Beats, same situation. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, / Gourmet Beats. That's where you can find me. So Instagram, Facebook, Joe Nice or Joe Nice DJ, Gourmet Beats. Website's joenicedj.net.
All right, go check him out, Joe Nice. We are gonna go get ready for the show tonight.
Yes, sir.
It's gonna be a bomb time.
Yeah, Arch Street Tavern tonight, all night long. We're going, not all night, I think we're going to 1:30.
Yeah, that's something Connecticut is like 1:30.
Yeah, for Connecticut, that's all night. For Connecticut, that's all night long. Yeah, it's going to be a wild one tonight. Myself, DJ Mad, obviously yourself. Who else we got to go on?
Got the Apothecary, Spenside, Juul.
That's it.
It's going to be a great time. I'm super excited. Can't wait.
But Ty said he was setting up the system tonight, so a lot of sound in that place.
There, it's going to be sounding.
A lot of sound. 4 CDJs. We're pounding.
Yes, sir. I'm sure people in this interview have already seen some clips from how crazy the show is.
Yeah, we're gonna spark it up tonight. And I got some things that I'm gonna play tonight that people aren't necessarily gonna be ready for, which is good because I like keeping people on their toes.
Oh yeah, well, we're looking forward to it, and I can't wait to get this interview out. People are gonna love it, man.
I hope so. I hope everybody gets something from it, and I hope I want to thank you for all the time you spent putting this together and the thoughtful questions and everything you're doing. It's good stuff. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Likewise, man. Thank you.